session, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for jumping over to the political involvement and political affairs breakout. That is fascinating research, and I guess we'll see what happens in a week. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandon Alderetti, here on staff at Texas Realtors. I'm your political affairs director, and I'd like to welcome you to Live on the Scene, Political Involvement and Political Action. For this session, we'll discuss why Texas Realtors even care about politics, how you can be involved in the political process, and how to be effective advocates in the 87th Texas legislature. We'll also discuss a little bit about the historic 2020 elections, but not too much because there's another great session tomorrow that's going to go way deeper into that. You don't want to miss it. Today, our first panel will discuss the different roles of the Texas Realtors Political Action Committee. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called TREPAC. And the Texas Realtors Political Involvement Committee. Their different roles in the election and campaign process and how they work together. This first session is going to be moderated by our 2020 chair of the Political Involvement Committee, Brandy Guthrie. And she's going to have a conversation with next year's chair of the Involvement Committee, 2021 Chairman Jeff Farnell, as well as Deborah Spangler, one of our great TREPAC past chair. She's the immediate past chair right now of TREPAC. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up Jeff, Deborah, and Brandy.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, Texas Realtors, and welcome to our panelists. You know, at first pass, people may hear the names of your respective committees, Political Action Committee, Political Involvement Committee, and be a bit confused about the difference. So I want to dive into that. But first, let's talk about something more important. To both of you, why are realtors involved in politics? Deborah, you go first.
Well, you know, I think a lot of times we don't realize that we are even involved in politics until something happens. Something comes across our radar and we are faced with a potential, almost a crisis, like a raise in property tax or somebody wanting to put a transfer tax on our commission, on our transactions, or a tax on our commission. And that's when we suddenly realize that we need to be involved in politics. And I think that's how a lot of us get involved, is because there's that need that's going to directly affect us or the people that we serve.
Great. Jeff?
Well, thank you, Chairman Guthrie. Politics is at every level of the Realtor organization. Right here in our own backyard, anytime we need to get anything done, we have to go through the planning and zoning process. Then from there, we'll have to go to the city council. And sometimes we run into obstacles and we have to rely on our realtor organizations. And one thing I've learned is the realtors are there at every level to help us throughout the process. And you know, when it comes to state politics, we have a great lobby team in Austin. You know, there's so much of the work is done, but even at the national level, we have the same thing in the in the United States Capitol. It's just an amazing network of political action, how we make things work throughout our organizations.
Great. Jeff, what is the PIC and how does it play a role in associations' advocacy efforts? I know you kind of touched on that, but could you elaborate a little bit more specifically about the Political Involvement Committee?
The Political Involvement Committee, we used to call it the Political Involvement Council a few years back, but now we're the Political Involvement Committee, is really involved in grassroots realtor member involvement, and that includes our affiliates, and then grassroots involvement with our elected officials in our campaigns. We work with all of our members on calls for action. Anytime there's an urgent issue and there's a call for action that is available, we need 100% participation so that all of the elected officials know that the realtors are behind this particular initiative. There's grassroots involvement with political campaigns where when we have an endorsed candidate, we do phone banking. We work with these campaigns. We get behind them. We're poll watchers and greeters. We help these candidates that we're supporting because we need to help make them successful because they help us to be successful as well.
Great, thank you. Deborah, what is TREPAC and how does it play a role?
Well, TREPAC, I think, is best explained in this incredible mission statement that our trustees created 2 or 3 years ago. They really refined it. It says exactly what we do. We are the Texas Association of Realtors Political Action Committee that raises and disperses funds to protect real property rights, that's residential and commercial, promote home ownership, and increase political awareness. So our state trustees and local members back home who work to raise funds are doing this all year long. And it might sound really easy to raise funds for something that's so incredibly important to us, but you have to educate people. We have over 130,000 members in our state, and we have to find different ways to communicate that message to all those different types of people. Some things may resound with one person, may not affect someone else. So it's really a very difficult task, but our trustees and our local members back home that work with TREPAC do an incredible job of educating people about why they need to be involved and why we need to raise funds. So I think it's been a great tool that we use to make us as great as we are in advocacy.
Well, Deborah, how does this work together to enhance our ability to be successful?
Well, we work with a PIC, and you have to have that partnership. We can't do what we do without the PIC. And I think that what makes us so successful is that we realize that we can raise all the money in the world, but if we're not working with a PIC who knows the right people to be in the right place at the right time, that money is not going to be effective. We have to rely on them to do their due process and bring those candidates forward that are going to represent us and going to have an open door policy with us so that we can have our issues heard and have that strong voice at the local, state, and national level. So I think that partnership is what makes us so successful.
Jeff, how do you see this as it enhances our ability as a PIC to be successful?
Well, the PIC is going to make recommendations to the PAC. The PAC doesn't necessarily need to follow the PIC's recommendation, but most of the time they do because we have the intel. We're the eyes and ears on the ground. We know what's going on in the communities that we serve. We're working with our local associations. We're working with our field reps so that we can gather intel. We're reading. We're monitoring. We're so engaged and involved throughout the whole process. There's not a thing that goes across Twitter. Our astute political involvement committee probably doesn't see. There's not a thing on Facebook that's involved with politics. From everything from the state, United States Senator who we're supporting John Cornyn in, all the way down to the courthouses that we're involved in. I mean, we're involved in every level of politics because all of those levels are involved with us. And without TREPAC's help to reinforce all of our intel with positive reinforcement. One thing you're going to find out about the Realtor organization when we're involved in politics, there's a lot of negative politics out there, a lot of partisan politics, some nasty things. You'll never see a nasty thing about a candidate or an issue behind the Realtor name. And that's one thing that makes me really, really proud is we're positive in all of our message. We work together, we collaborate, we work with our local communities, we work with our state government, and we work with the United States representatives and senators too.
Great, thank you. Deborah, we always talk about your aha moment. What was that for you? And what grabbed you and made you want to get involved?
Well, first of all, I've told this story before when I've spoken. What grabbed me was somebody reaching out to me and asking me to get involved. And that someone was someone that I respect, actually our past state TAR leadership, Vicki Fullerton, our chairperson. She reached out to me at an event, totally not related to TREPAC, and said, we need you to get involved. And because I had this respect for her, I immediately said yes. And of course, I had to go back and find out what TREPAC was and what I just said yes to, because I didn't know. But those are the ways that people get involved. Somebody has to ask, somebody has to reach out. And so I encourage anyone who's already involved to find someone and bring them in. But my real aha moment came at my very first candidate interview when I was involved like the next year with the PIC at home on a local level. And I heard our candidates speak, the ones that we were interviewing, and saw their views on realtor issues, their views on property taxes, their reasons why they were choosing to serve. And it ran from everywhere to, wanting to make things a better place, making their community better, to they got mad because somebody parked in their driveway and messed up the cul-de-sac. So you begin to realize, my aha moment was, we have to get the right people into the right place. We have to elect the right people to represent us, because nothing will be done if those people in office do not understand what's important to the real estate community. And so that was really, for me, a turning point to see that we've got to raise the funds, we've got to get involved, we've got to spread that message and communicate so that we can have that voice and get those people in there. And that was my aha moment.
Jeff, same for you. What made you get involved in the Realtor Association?
Well, I wish I could have a different answer than Deborah, but actually somebody asked me. I had just gotten my broker's license a good while back, and I'm not from Texas. I hate to admit that, but I'm not. And I grew up in Louisiana, and of course, going to school, you learn about your state's studies, Texas studies or Louisiana studies. Well, I didn't have Texas studies. And I saw an email from my local association, Metrotex, that said, come with us to go to the Texas Capitol, Realtor Day at the Capitol. And I thought, wow, that'll be interesting. I'll get a free, of course, I'm always about self-serving, a free trip to the Capitol, and I'll get to network because I'm a new broker, and I'll get to find out some things. Well, I happened to sit on the bus next to a lady I just had met. Her name was Kay Weeks. And she said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm just here for the free ride. And she said, do you like government? And I had been to Louisiana Boys State. I don't think they have that kind of thing here in Texas, where you learn from a high school level, you go to your state's capital and you learn about the state government. I had done that in Louisiana, very interested in government. And I wanted to go see the Texas Capitol. And she said, Kay said, well, if you're interested in government, she said, why don't you come to one of our Government Affairs Committee meetings? So that's really where it got started. And like Deborah, I signed up for candidate interviews, and then I started to learn about TREPAC. And I tell you, that first $45, I think it was $35 back in those days, that I let off of, was that was a tough one for me, until I learned what a value it was. And my aha moment was the success that we have, how the Realtor organization works together to keep the government out of our pocket, to make it easier for us to do business, for the transfer taxes and the tax on our services. So many things that the Realtor organization does for all of us. That investment, that minimal investment, just pays dividends over and over and over again.
Well, and we're glad you finally made it to Texas to be able to call that home. You chose right at the end. So Deborah, you chaired TREPAC in 2019, and of course saw wonderful success, including record fundraising totals. So now you're rolling off the pack, and I have a couple of questions for you. So what will you miss most about your role?
Well, that's easy. I was so fortunate to be able to travel last year, pre-COVID, and I went out to so many of our boards and visited with our members. And I was able to see them in their home turf, and to see the challenges that they faced and the unique setup that they had, and the things that they were going through, and how they overcame those challenges and obstacles. And I had such an appreciation for what they were doing back home that we don't often get to see when we come to a meeting in Austin and we sit with someone for a little bit. But to go and see them in their element, it was such a wonderful experience, and such an encouraging one, because you see what they're dealing with, and you see how far they've come and their successes, and it makes every moment away from my family, away from my business, made it worthwhile, because every time I'd come away from meeting a member and seeing what they were doing and their wonderful spirit and their passion for TREPAC and for advocacy, it just energizes you. So I will really deeply miss that.
What is the most common misconception that you hear about TREPAC?
Oh, I think that there are a few, but I think the biggest misconception is that we support one party over another. And that is especially true this election cycle. It's been an ongoing battle that we have to speak with people and tell them, no, we don't always vote Republican. We don't always support Democrat. Usually it's almost very evenly divided when you go back and you look at the numbers. And so we have to tell them, we're the Realtor Party. We are focused on the Realtor issues and the issues that are going to affect property rights and of our Texas citizens. And that's an issue that just time and time again rears its heads. And so I hope that we can eventually overcome that, and people will be more in tune with the seeing that we're not looking at the party, we're looking at the person.
Well, what would you say to a newer realtor who's concentrating on building their sphere, getting their business going, about why they should invest in TREPAC?
Well, that's something that I think is very dear to me. I think that my real estate career as a profession really started when I began investing and being involved in TREPAC. And I would encourage them, because you learn so much about the issues that are affecting us. You're a better realtor. You can serve your clients better because you know what's going on in your community. You get information, you meet people. It's that iron sharpens iron. You're around some really incredible people that will bring you along and help you to be a better realtor, to better serve your people and your community.
Great. So Jeff, you're chairing the PIC next year, and it will be an interesting session given the pandemic, sizable budget shortfall, and of course, we have redistricting. So tell me what you hope to accomplish this year, or 2021, with the Political Involvement Committee.
Well, being on the PIC behind you, Chairman Guthrie and Chairman Phipps, I'm gonna tell you, I have some big shoes to fill, and we have a lot of work to do. This will be the most interesting session, because almost certainly we won't have in-person meetings at the Texas Capitol, which is even more reason why we need to get back to the basics, the blocking and tackling of grassroots involvement. And that is working with our legislative contact teams. Joanna Ramirez has done a fantastic job putting this program together and kind of shepherding it along. And we have really got to get our team solidified after this election, make sure we got the right people in the right place, supporting the right people. And it's going to be imperative on each one of the PIC members in their regions to oversee this program with the guidance of Joanna and with the help of our field reps, because we're not going to be in person. We're going to have to be in their offices, and probably give us an opportunity to be in their offices a lot more regular with this legislative contact structure that we have.
Great. All right, so we have time just for a couple of additional questions. Deborah, give me your most acute memory of a time when TREPAC made a difference in a race.
Well, making difference in a race, there are quite a few, because we have made some significant impacts on so many races. Off the top of my head, Sarah Davis in the Houston area in her district, she had a very difficult last election cycle, very difficult primary, difficult election, but the realtor community came behind her, TREPAC and our political affairs, and did everything from block blocking, phone calls, spent money on email campaigns and mailing campaigns, because we believed in her. She was the incumbent and she was supporting us, she was carrying our water, and we wanted to see her win, and she did in a very difficult time. And she often will go publicly and tell what a critical role that Texas Realtors played in getting her elected. She's very grateful for that. Justin Holland in 2016, who won by less than 100 votes. Those votes wouldn't have been there if Texas Realtors hadn't gotten behind him. Cody Harris, Palestine, who was started out with single digit recognition. Nobody knew who he was. His opponent was over 50% in the polls, and he came out, he won. He won. It was because realtors went full force behind him, no holds barred, and got him from 0 to 60 and got him elected. And so those are the types of races that we have seen that are in the big name. But you know what? We're making a memory now, because I know that our current candidates, our current people that we're supporting, their fundraising has taken a hit. They can't do their traditional going out doing these in-person fundraisers. They have their constituents who have not been able to, they've lost their jobs here in Texas, not just COVID, but the oil layoffs. So they're not getting in that fundraising that they usually get, but guess who is able to support them? It's TREPAC. And I think we're going to be seeing that we made a significant difference this year because our members continue to invest. They continue to see the significance of being advocates. And I think we're in a memory in the making right now.
Wonderful. Well, actually, that's about all the time that we have. I just want to thank you both for your leadership. Looking forward to Jeff's leadership coming into 2021, and Deborah for everything that you've done. Thank you for your years of service to TREPAC. I know you're rolling off this year, but I'm sure we'll still continue to find you and championing TREPAC and the mission. So let's tune in to this short video about our support site. All right, so now we've heard why it's important for realtors to engage in politics and how PIC and TREPAC are involved. Now let's turn the discussion to something that has made the presence known over the last few months: elections. Joining me for this discussion is Joanna Ramirez, Texas Realtors Political Affairs Specialist. So Joanna, what's going on right now? You staying busy? Anything we need to be aware of?
Well, the elections are going on right now, Brandy. This year, as I'm sure everyone is aware and has heard it so many times, is a presidential election year. But here in Texas, we also have a U.S. Senate race, 36 U.S. House races, 150 Texas House seats, and half of the Texas Senate on ballot. That doesn't even include the judicial races, the hundreds of May municipal elections that were postponed because of COVID-19, and the ballot measures varying in each jurisdiction. There's a lot of interesting races happening across the state of Texas that we're monitoring. And actually, if you want to take a deep dive into the analysis of the 2020 election, we have a great session tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. called Schoolhouse Rock, Advocacy and Elections Preview, and that will be with Jeff Laylock, who has the inside scoop on some of the key races across the state. And don't forget, although I know you've heard it a million times and are getting lots of mailers and texts from candidates, we're in the middle of early voting, and that ends this week with Election Day on November 3rd.
So what you're saying is it's running out of time to actually get out and vote. So if you haven't already, and a large number already have, please make sure you get to the polls to vote. As she mentioned, early voting ends this Friday, October 30th, and then we will have Election Day on the 3rd.
Exactly. And before our members head to the polls, you need to check out our support site that we have for a list of our realtor supported candidates. And you can do so by visiting TexasRealtorsSupport.com.
You know, that's not just any list. TexasRealtorsSupport.com has a personalized list based on your residency to ensure you get the relevant candidates for you. You might be wondering how we put this together. How did we decide who we're going to support? Well, that process began over 15 months ago with the PIC evaluating the elected officials on their performance and on our priority issues after this last session. However, this is not the final review by any means. Our local associations play a critical role in understanding each candidate, how they engage at the local level for the year and a half that the legislature isn't in session, And before the primary elections occur, local boards submit their recommendation for support to TREPAC based on the candidate interviews that the local boards hold. Once a candidate recommendation comes through and is approved by TREPAC, then the PIC get involved in those races. Joanna, why don't you walk everyone through some of the ways the PIC can engage in these races?
Absolutely. So the Political Involvement Committee can engage in lots of different ways, starting with either early engagement or opportunity race requests by their local board. This is a critical partnership between Texas Realtors and the local boards. And as you mentioned, the PIC began working on some of these races 15 months ago to begin evaluating legislators and IDing races for early engagement.
Campaigning a full year before the general election may seem unnecessary, but due to modern politics, it can be vital in these competitive districts.
Yeah, Brandy, that's right. And if we wait too long to engage in a race, the race might be over before we can even help. One of the other ways that the PIC can engage is through our opportunity races. Opportunity races are realtor-facing campaigns that are conducted on behalf of supported candidates and are collaborative efforts between our state association and local association. Once an opportunity race is submitted to Texas Realtor staff, the PIC will review the race and send the recommendation to the Texas Realtors Legislative Management Team. Once that's approved, action will be taken in that race, which may include some realtor-facing direct mail, some polling, phone banking, websites, social media outreach, meet and greets, and other efforts to help elect our realtor champions.
So local boards play a pivotal role in the recommendation process and ensuring that we act as soon as possible. Are there any other roles the PIC plays during the election and campaign process?
Absolutely, Brandy. So the PIC members can work with their Texas Realtors field rep and political affairs staff, as well as their local government affairs directors and GA committee, and as Jeff mentioned in the previous session, our legislative contact team members, and they volunteer on TREPAC supported candidate campaigns. The realtors can make a huge impact on campaigns by volunteering to do phone banks, with door-to-door knocking efforts, or making handwritten notes for the candidates, assisting at the polls, but most importantly, mobilizing other realtors to get involved and go vote.
That's right. You as realtors across this state can help tip the scales, especially further down the ballot you go. Some of the tight races we've engaged with in the past have been decided by as little as 11 votes. We have an unprecedented number of members who turn out to vote. And in several races in recent history, we have been the deciding factor in an election. So make sure to vote.
Yes, Texas Realtor voter turnout makes a big impact on races. In fact, I checked last night, and with the close of the polls, we've had over 63% of Texas Realtors turn out to vote, and the statewide turnout is 47%.
Yay. Sorry, that deserved the clap. And that is absolutely amazing. So you've heard it, folks. When Texas Realtors vote, Texas Realtors make a difference. Joanna, are there any other interesting voter turnout numbers you're seeing throughout the state?
Yes, we're seeing record turnout across the state, Brandy. And as of Sunday, over 7.4 million Texans have already voted. Just a little comparison for y'all, over 8.9 million people voted in the 2016 presidential election. So only 13 days into early voting, and we're already 82% of the way to the total voter turnout in 2016.
Wow. Thank you, Joanna, for sharing some insight in the election process with us. And I look forward to hearing more analysis of the 2020 election. That's all we have time for today, folks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for taking the time to talk with us today. We appreciate your leadership in 2020 and look forward to continuing working with you in the future.
Advocacy happens here.
And here.
Advocacy starts here.
And way out here, even.
Advocacy happens here.
And here.
And way out here.
We are the Realtor Party.
Advocacy starts here.
And here.
Advocacy starts here.
here.
We are the Realtor Party.
Advocacy starts just about everywhere, even in Waller, Texas.
Voting is realtor advocacy.
Vote, act, invest.
Welcome to the Texas Capitol. Advocacy definitely happens here.
Well, thanks, Brandy and Joanna, and to our previous panel as well with Chair Spangler and Chair Varnell. I'm going to bring some folks back up here, and we're going to talk a little bit more about, what advocacy looks like. That was a great Advocacy Happens Here video. I loved it. So now that we've discussed how realtors engage in campaigns and elections, let's look forward a little bit to what happens after the election, right? The legislative session, and how we engage during the legislative session. How do we continue to advocate once candidates become legislators? To discuss that, I'm going to bring up the 2021 leadership team of the Political Involvement Committee, Chair Jeff Varnell, Vice Chair J.R. Martinez, and Committee Liaison Tom Schwenk. One of the biggest and most well-attended events by realtors across the state is our Realtor Day at the Texas Capitol. You heard Jeff mention that in his segment before. That was sort of he was here for the bus ride. Man, it's looked more, now he's the leader of the pick next year. So I want to dive into a little bit of that. Jeff, what would you say happens on Realtor Day that makes the event so successful? What makes our Advocacy Day different than everyone else's?
Well, if nothing else, just the sheer size. When we converge on the Texas Capitol, we have just thousands of Texas realtors just gather in Austin at the state capitol and meet with representatives and their senator. This event puts legislators face to face with all of our realtor constituents and reinforces our association's legislative agenda. And it shows the true size and influence that we have.
So what's Tom? What would you say is a difference between that and what we do and what other groups do?
Well, I think one of the big reasons is our before Realtor Day is how we prepare for it. There's the legislative contact team members that up to the minute briefing about the status of the current legislation that are so distracted.
Okay. Tom, we're having a little trouble hearing you. I think what you were saying is that the legislative contact teams kind of get up to the minute briefings about what has happened so far in the legislature. See if we can get your audio fixed there. Is that right? Oh, you're muted, buddy. We'll jump over to JR. JR, after the meeting with the legislators at the Capitol, realtors cross the street and head back to the Texas Realtors headquarters, at least in regular years, in all the previous sessions. This lunch enables contact teams and Realtor Day attendees to enjoy time with their legislators and statewide officials and Capitol staff, as well as network with other realtors from across the state. Not to mention, they get to take a look at the Texas Realtors building.
Mm-hmm. No, you're definitely right, about that. We do, like Jeff said, he went on a bus ride to go eat down in Austin. And, I heard that this year, since we probably won't be getting together for lunch down in Austin, that Texas Realtors will be sending us DoorDash. Is that correct? I'm just kidding. So
I haven't seen that come across my desk yet. We can talk about it. I don't know if DoorDash delivers up to Fort Worth, JR. Sorry, man.
It does. I've already checked. So.
In 2019, we had about 3,000 realtors here on Realtor Days. I mean, a tremendous show of force. And that's a lot of realtors at the Capitol. I wonder how, Jeff, how you see that changing for 2021, given the pandemic and where we are right now and just where we are, right?
I know all the PIC and especially staff and our leaders in Austin are closely monitoring the situation. While we're unsure of what the Realtor Day at the Texas Capitol might look like, we know it'll probably not look like it has in the past. The good thing is that we're thinking ahead, and we'll be able to put it together with the legislative contact teams to use to facilitate those visits with our legislators. whether it be face-to-face meetings or virtual meetings, but we will be prepared to meet virtually. One thing I can say is whether it's face-to-face online or face-to-face at the Texas Capitol, we will be face-to-face with our legislators, and it may give us an opportunity to even, many times when we meet with their legislative staffers. I would imagine if it's all going to be online meetings, we'll have a greater opportunity to meet with the legislators themselves.
Okay, I'll try to hear me, Brandon.
Yeah, we got you.
We got you, great. Well, yeah, Jeff, picking up on that. As a matter of fact, our legislative contact team are going to a virtual training discuss the way to develop for the one of the for 2 o'clock. Right. Not right. Thank your legislator. Who doesn't like a thank you note? So that's I'm really looking forward to it, because like everything else now, as we heard earlier. Brandon, back.
Yeah, I think again we had a little bit of problem with your audio. If I made out, I think I made out that you were talking about the upcoming training as we move into possibly virtual Realtor Day. I think we could obviously say here that our legislative contact teams is a real big priority for Chair Varnell next year. And we have a training session for them next week, November 4th at 2 p.m. That's going to be by the Congressional Management Foundation. And I picked up, out of what you said, Tom, I picked up next week at 2 p.m. So I think you were going there, and I apologize if that's not an accurate representation of where you were going. But we'll have a big session about how to tell your story and how to convey the realtor position through storytelling and make it a more effective advocacy tool in our tool belt. It really does localize and personalize the issue for those legislators. So, Tom, see if we can get you back here. If someone is interested in joining a legislative contact team, what would be the best way for them to join?
Well, the best way to join a legislative contact team, and I'm hoping you're hearing me, is to get in touch with your Texas Realtors field representative, and you can, or by emailing Joanna Ramirez at jramirez@texasrealtors.com. And you should know Joanna and her website, her email, and there's an incredible amount of information on our website. So hopefully you heard that, Brandon. If not, pick up on it. Thank you.
No, we got that one. And I would also point out that Joanna is running that program. She's doing a fantastic job. She started last year after Realtor Day with some notes to the legislators, help the legislative contact teams get in touch with their lawmakers with some notes. And we're trying to really build that relationship and build that program. So if you're interested in joining a legislative contact team and letting Joanna help you build that relationship with those lawmakers, just email jramirez@texasrealtors.com, or you can get in touch with your field rep. And you can find them at texasrealestate.com/field rep. Members of these contact teams really do play a key role in the association's advocacy efforts. But in what other ways did Texas Realtors work with legislators during legislative sessions? Let's go to JR.
Thanks, Brandon. So, Texas Realtors will occasionally release calls for action, or we call them CFAs, to raise legislatures' awareness of priority issues, or ask them to vote, yes or no on a specific piece of legislative. So Texas Realtors can send out targeted CFAs to few key members, or send them out to all members.
Yeah, JR, that's real important, because during the 2019 legislative session, Texas Realtor members from across the state sent more than 6,100 messages to Texas House of Representatives in less than a 28-hour time span when we had a key property tax reform bill that was up for a vote. Tom?
And, Jeff, conversely, during the same session, we had a smaller call for action where we targeted one specific legislator, and 8 realtors responded to a call for action, which was vote. Our voices are heard. And that's really important. Back to barbecue, there's thousands of us there, and one on a bus.
Yeah, that's true. And I think what you were getting at was the limited call for action that we targeted one person, and he heard from 8 people. And, we always talk about the calls for action and it's like, oh, well, we got 20% participation or whatever it was. We sent 16,000 messages. Sometimes, y'all, it's getting the right people to call, those legislative contact team members, the political involvement committee, or whoever it is, and just, the staffers get enough calls, and it's sometimes as few as 3 or 4 calls are enough to really make a difference with the legislator. I remember that bill y'all were talking about, and my colleague here at the office, Julia, the lobbyist, I remember took a call from a legislator at like 7 a.m. because he got 3 calls and he said, y'all are lighting me up. Stop. What do you want to talk about? So that initiated a call, and that's called advocacy, and that's good stuff. That's why we do what we do. It just does go to show you that, whatever size the call for action is, they're impactful. Those folks hear our message and they want to know our opinions. And it's such a huge component about how you all are involved and so effective at the Capitol. Well, do we have any questions from the audience? Have we seen any questions come in? Okay, I'm seeing no questions. Do you guys have anything that you'd want to say to this crowd? We have this whole group of Texas realtors watching across the state. Is there anything, Jeff, that as chair of this committee next year, is there anything that you might want to say to these folks watching?
I would. Thank you, Brandon. I'd like to reemphasize how important it is to be engaged, to network with your fellow realtors. Let them know that it's time to get involved. If nothing else, and I know, Brandon, this is one of your biggest passions is to vote. We're at, I think Joanna said, 69% realtor vote participation. We need that to be 100%. We need to get really involved with the process. And once the election is over, it's time to go to work. And we're going to be networking, and we're going to be working with our field reps throughout the state. And we're going to, I know that our public policy is going to be coming out with our policy positions, and we'll have our legislative agenda and our legislative priorities. I'm looking forward to seeing what those look like, because that's when it's time we'll have a little education campaign to understand those things, because when we go in and speak with our legislators face to face, whether it be Zoom or in person, when we understand our issues, then we're able to converse about those very, very well. And it's so important that we understand our issues and that we're well versed on those, because I've been in meetings with legislators before, and I've been stumped before, and it's not as pretty as when you're very well versed on and on the issues. And I will say this about Texas Realtors, and I've always been so impressed with how we are so educated as realtor members when we go talk to our legislators. We understand the issues, and what Texas Realtors does, and you don't have to worry, is they'll tell you what the other side is going to say. They'll tell you what our positions are. They'll tell you what the opponents are going to say to our policy position, and have you well versed on that. So don't be afraid to go in there and just tag along and join and be ready to chime in. And it's going to be so important to be on a legislative contact team.
Yeah, Jeff, you said something towards the end there that perked my ears up, and we did get one question from the audience, and I'll get to that in a second. Don't be afraid. We're not going to put you in a position to fail. You have wonderful leaders like Jeff, JR, and Tom, and Brandy before her, Deborah, all your members of the PIC, no matter what region of the state you're in, you have somebody on the political involvement committee who is a political animal. That's why they got selected for that role. They will help you. And then the staff here, my colleagues, we put together a set of talking points that are custom to each legislator, including up to and including the previous week's committee hearing. So you're not going to go into an office and say, hey, Representative Smith, I sure hope you support this bill, only to have him turn around and say, yeah, that's my bill. I definitely support it. We're never going to put you in a situation like that. We're going to give you the best tools. And I really just encourage you, if you've never been, especially if you've never been to a Realtor Day at the Texas Capitol, and pay attention to your local board, because it's a huge deal and it really, really matters. One of the questions, oh Lord, okay, so this was the question. Somebody in the audience who knows me wants to know why my desk is so clean. My desk is so clean because I knew I was going to be on camera, and I will tell you that I clean this desk once a year, whether it needs it or not. Thank you for that question. That was probably Ben Rodriguez, I think. Asked that. How can PIC members assist legislative contact team or legislative contact team members? And I'll throw that to anybody who wants to answer, JR, Jeff, or Tom. How can PIC members assist legislative contact teams?
JR, go ahead.
Sure, no, I'll definitely take this one. And one of the important things, and I was thinking about it, is the grassroots effort that we do. A lot of the things that we do is personal relationships. Knowing our legislators. One of the legislators that we have now in Austin is a friend of mine who I've known for a while, and so just being and knowing saying, hey, you know what, we have this issue coming up. Can you call him directly? Not a problem. So that's one of the ways that we can help out our PIC members. Is what relationship do we have among our PIC members with our legislative contact teams? How can we get in through the door? And like Brandon said, we're just not going to throw you out there. You're very well prepared. You will know the issues and topics that we're going to be discussing. And, sometimes just having that personal relationship with someone at Capitol will help us get through the door.
Well, and to that point, JR, I don't know how many new legislators we're going to have in the Capitol building this time, but we're going to have some new faces in the Texas Capitol. The makeup is changing, and it's very likely that it will continue to change. And some of the people that have the relationships with the legislators that will no longer be there will need some help with some relationship building with some of the people that are going to be coming in. And that's going to be so important for everybody in our organization, because when you're called upon, we're going to need you to step up and ask you to work and ask you for your intel. And it's going to be so important, because you got to remember one thing. We're all on the same team here when it comes to Texas Realtors. We need help, because I've heard it said, and it's even more important than ever, Texas Realtors need to continue to be a force at the Texas Capitol. And to be that force at the Texas Capitol, we've got to remain relevant. And if we don't have friends in the building, we're going to be in trouble. So just be ready when I call, and just say yes, because I know who's got the relationships with who because of the data we have. We've got some data that is unbelievable. We know how you vote, where you vote, and it's public information that we have. So I'm looking forward to more people getting involved. Brandon, do you have anything on that?
I do. I think what I'd really like to say about that is, we are going to have some new lawmakers. I think it's clear after Election Day happens, which is just 1 week away. It's so weird. I heard Brandy mention earlier that 15 months ago is when we started preparing for this election. And I look back, and it's like kind of a time warp, right? It's been a really long time, but also it seems like it just happened. Like how in the world are we already at almost November of 2020, right? I think right now, the thing that I'd like to say is, I keep hearing the word relationship pop up, and that's really key. And real estate is a relationship business, and so is politics, and so is governing. I think what I'd like to say is it helps us to have the relationship before we need it, right? If you're walking in there on Realtor Day, or you're starting a meeting with your lawmaker on Realtor Day, and they've never heard of you before, they don't know anything about the realtors, nothing, and you're coming in with a big ask, I'm not going to say it's a problem, but I think we should have that relationship first. So as soon as we have some results on election day and we know some new people, let's go ahead and start forging those relationships. Got a couple other questions popping in. I'm glad to see some interaction here. We'll throw this one out. Do you ever encounter anyone who is intimidated by the idea of talking to legislators? And if so, what do you say to them? How do you encourage them? How do you say, it's okay, take that step?
I'd like to jump in on that one. Yeah, it's very easy to be intimidated when you see people in the news, on local news or even national news, and to talk to them. And people, most people are self-effacing. And one of the greatest ways that I found to familiarize myself with my local and, the local and the state representatives is find excuses to thank them. Look for what they do to help us as realtors. I had one agent a few years ago taught me something. She called me when I was just getting involved in PIC, and she named a legislator and said, how can I thank them? And it stuck with me because people will remember everybody complains, but to take the time to thank them for what they've really truly done to help us as realtors and as professionals. And, to pick up what Jeff was saying earlier, I think everybody that's watching this right now, you are engaged. So make it your point to teach another one of your constituents, one of your peers. Each one teach one. And if they can be with you when you're engaging, the intimidation goes away. Everyone goes to bed and wakes up, brushes their teeth, hopefully. So that's pretty much my deal is don't be intimidated. Look at all of us. Most of us are small business owners. We're the backbone of this wonderful state. All right, so someone else?
I would say just get involved on a interview panel at your local association. It's important that you get to know these candidates that come through, even at the city and school level, and open that dialogue. Never be afraid just to tag along and not say anything. Just listen and learn, watch, and see what the leaders of the association and the organization do. Just go and be a part. JR?
Well, I'm going to make a comment, and it's going to kind of take us off topic a little bit, but I'm sure Brandon will bring us back on topic. But one of the things that I really like about Texas Realtors, whenever we support a candidate, we support candidates in both parties, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat. And I think it's important for our legislative contacts and our PIC members to remember that, these are real estate issues. This is our livelihood. This is why we're supporting certain candidates. It doesn't depend on what party affiliation they have. And it's okay for you to help somebody out who you may not have the same party affiliation, because, they've been a friend of ours, and that's why we support them. I mean, I have no issues helping somebody out who is not part of my party, but because this is part of our livelihood. This is why we go out and support them.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yes to everything. And that's sort of a good segue into another question that we got, which is, what do you recommend realtors do right now to be advocates, to support our advocacy initiatives? And I'll throw that one out. Let's go to Jeff first.
It just keeps coming back to being involved and being engaged and networking among your peers. And what I find is it's going to help you in your business. Tom said it best. We're small business owners, whether you work for a franchise real estate company or you're a loan broker owner. You're in business. You need to engage and network, and just jump out there. Join a committee at your local level. That's the first step. Apply for a committee at the state level, and when you're involved, learn from the leaders that are there. Soak up the knowledge, and that way you'll be the next leader.
Tom, what would you say? What are some things realtors can do right now to support the association's advocacy initiatives?
Well, be seen as some sort of expert. Each one of us has a special, specific skill. And even more so, it could be in your business. For instance, I'm pretty much known as the historic expert in Galveston. So therefore, when there's issues that come up on that, I do get calls from local council members. Jeff said to be on the school board, be involved. And you're advocating for a lot of different people. And I think that's the biggest thing. This is our business, this is our livelihood, but it's also where we live and we interact. So it's a passion that we have, and make sure that our legislators know about that passion, because they're going to need help with it. That's what I would think. What do you think, JR?
I think we have a great opportunity right now. We're in an election cycle. You know, right now we have early voting. We have election day coming up on Tuesday. So find out which candidates we're supporting and go out to the poll locations and help them out. You know, that's a good way for you to get involved, a good way to meet who we support as candidates. And like was said earlier, we want to build our relationships now, not in an emergency, whenever we need to. So, you know, definitely let's get out there and support our realtor candidates.
Well, and then from my perspective, we heard some numbers from Joanna earlier. 63% of Texas realtors have voted. So for you, 37%, what you can do is go to Texas Realtors. Did I do that math right? I think I did. For you who haven't voted yet, visit texasrealtorsupport.com and you enter your address, and you can see the federal and state candidates on your ballot, and go out and vote. Please vote. You have to vote this year. It's more important than ever. It's always important, but I feel like if you don't vote, you're going to regret it this year. We did get one more question, and it's something that I'll take as staff. We had a question about the speaker's race in the Texas House. And I want everybody on this webinar, whoever's viewing me on TRTV, Network TRTV, to know that Texas Realtors does not take a position on the speaker's race. That is an internal legislative matter. We are delighted to work with whomever the members of the Texas House elect as their next speaker. I think a lot of that's, of course, going to depend on the outcomes November 4th, or November 3rd. So let's see what happens on election day, and we might have a clearer picture of who that might be, but we are not taking a position. We're delighted to work with whomever. I mean, I don't see any other questions going on. If there's no other questions, we can actually wrap early and give everybody a couple minutes back of their time. Jeff, you want to take us out?
I will. And I just want to throw one thing on the end of what you said about the speaker's race, because last session we had a one and done speaker. We didn't get involved in that race. In this session, you know, we'll have a new speaker. We know that. We'll have a new speaker, and we'll have a relationship with that speaker, and it'll be a great one. We have a relationship with the leader in the Senate. So that's what we do. We'll have a relationship with the speaker. And I've heard it said, and Brandon knows this, that the parties both will elect this speaker. So whatever party you're affiliated with, that party will have input into the speaker, who the speaker will be. And most likely, the minority party that's in the Texas House will have the most impact on who the speaker is, because they'll have the influence. So for political junkies and insiders, just know that if your party is the minority party going into this thing, you'll have the most influence coming out of who the speaker's going to be. So
that's a good point. And that's really all I think that's all we have time for. And I'd like to thank you guys all. You guys are such awesome leaders, and it's my privilege to be your staff member on the Political Involvement Committee. So look forward to continuing to see your successes in 2021. And for all of those out there on TRTV Network, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for a really in-depth look into Texas Realtors public policy, either local or at the state level. So make sure you tune in tomorrow for that local and state issues session from 1 to 2. Jeff?
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us today to learn a little bit more about Texas Realtors and our approach to political advocacy, whether it's supporting candidates through TREPAC or grassroots activities, sharing your real-world rural perspectives with lawmakers, or just staying engaged, and it's incredibly important. Your actions can make such a huge difference in the conversations at the Texas Capitol. And it's a big part of what makes Texas such a great place to buy, sell, lease, and own real property. You are the big part of the Texas miracle. We're shaping Texas, as Chairman Bulla has said. Don't forget to join us tomorrow for an election analysis by Jeff Blaylock at 10:30, followed by a panel of media representatives at 11:15 for the behind the scenes look at the importance of the media and how to engage with them. In the afternoon, for our final session of the day at 1 o'clock, learn about how Texas Realtors engage in policy on both the local and state level and how you can be involved. Thank you again for joining us, and I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll see y'all tomorrow.
Hey, Jeff.